it more closely resembles hunting grizzlies in the Arctic, because when you're hunting grizzlies in the Arctic, you take a few steps, reach down, grab a blueberry. Here you do the same thing, you reach over, grab a grape.
Has that classic Columbia Blacktail look to him. Kind of crowns out, like comes back in towards himself. And from the second you showed me the picture of him from scouting, I was like, that's the buck I really want to shoot.
Well, and the worst thing you can do when you're squeezing off a round is to jerk the trigger, right? You got to follow through, but there's a big difference between following through on your shot and admiring your shot.
Absolutely true, and these are all of the little shooting tips and aids that you can pick up either from reading the writings in a good magazine like Petersen's Hunting.
Considering some of the traditions like popping the cork on a cab if you kill in the cab vines and some other nice tasting opportunities ago, I think that when it comes to Central Coast blacktails, I think the Steinbeck Vineyard is going to be my norm in the future.
I am excited to announce that we have partnered with the Outdoorsmans in Fountain Hills, Arizona. They can provide all of your optics needs along with some of the best machine tripods and mounting accessories in the business. Swarovski, Zeiss, Leica, Leupold, binoculars, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, you name it. They can provide it, and at the industry's most competitive prices. They are offering our listeners an exclusive offer on all Outdoorsman's manufactured products such as packs, tripods, tripod heads, and other gear they manufacture. At checkout, type in the discount code RNA15, that is RNA15, and you'll receive a one-time 15% off your order. Please go to outdoorsmans.com and use the discount code today. Thank you for the support. Yeah, so we're here at the Steinbeck Ranch in Paso Robles, California, and pretty cool place on opening weekend for the A-Zone General Hunt. And you and I and Kevin did a little drive around a few nights ago, and just kind of got a little run of the flock just to see what was moving around. But Kevin's hosted a pretty cool hunt here this weekend for the opener, and it was interesting when I walked in this evening. It felt like there was this contagious feeling of death as I walked in, because I went in straight. I didn't even come and see the guys. I walked straight in to the walk-in cooler because I knew exactly what I was going to look for, and there was two nice deer sitting in there. So some successful hunters have come in and done some good work. So with that, let's go ahead. We'll go around the room and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about yourself and kind of your background.
Okay. Well, I'm Joe Ferronato. I'm the associate editor of Petersen's Hunting. Kevin Steele is my boss, and we came out here to do some deer hunting at the Steinbeck Vineyards, which has just been absolutely phenomenal. Was lucky enough to take a good deer. I had never hunted blacktail before, even though I'm a California native. Grew up just south of here. And
that's almost sacrilegious, isn't it? A native.
It
moved
really
to Montana.
Well, yeah,
and he's never hunted blacktail.
I don't know if it's sacrilegious if it's the norm anymore.
Yeah. Right.
With California's moving to Montana.
Yeah.
How did your neighbors feel about that?
I don't tell them.
First thing you do is change the plates, right?
Exactly. I went to school at Boise State, and when I was in Boise, I was from Montana, and when I'm in Montana, I'm from Boise.
Okay.
So you're smart, Joe. You went about it the other way. See, I was born and raised in Montana, and I'm in California now, so trying to figure out a way to get back.
We just traded places.
Yeah.
It's okay.
No, it's all good. Well, welcome, Joe. Awesome deer. Talk more about it today, and it was cool. Interesting story to preload this. I got a text from a good buddy of mine. He goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, he calls me. He goes, "You at work?" I said, "Yeah." And then he calls me and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing? Are you scouting deer?" I said, "No, I'm at work." He goes, "Oh." He goes, "I thought you'd be out looking at deer." I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, my buddy Joe, he's coming down to hunt with you." And I said, "I don't think so." So then, of course, we started group text and introduced each other. And Joe's like, "Yeah, I know. I'm coming down to Paso Robles, and I'm hunting in some vineyard somewhere down in Paso Robles." So, of course, I screenshot it, sent it right to Ryan. I said, "Hey, Ryan, you got..." And, of course, then he goes, "And I'm also connecting with Kevin Steele." And so it was like we were already coming out to do our little trip. So it was just funny how small of a world it is and how all that kind of connection came together. So
super small. Just everybody knows everybody, and the connections, especially in this industry, are just so fun. So great to know everybody.
I'm Jason Morton. I'm the VP of Marketing for Seas USA, and so also my first time hunting blacktails, not from California. Just putting that out there.
out there, yeah.
But yeah, I love mule deer hunts. That's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite hunts, and so the blacktail being a type of mule deer, I was excited about it.
First time to the Central Coast, too, then, Jason? Or?
No, I've come out here and hunted with Kevin on a couple occasions for turkeys and swine. Gotcha. And I guess our soul suppressor conversation came about because you showed me a picture of a pig your buddy got yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Opening day of deer season, right?
Yeah.
And it's in the dark because that's when they were packing it out. But I'm like, well, they're using thermals, right? No, can't do that here. And I'm like, so I already knew you couldn't use suppressors, or else I would have brought one with me. And I wouldn't even think of hunting pigs without a thermal and a suppressor. It just seems like it. That's like that. It turns it into work.
It makes it a hunt.
Yeah,
you're supposed to kill pigs, not hunt
Texas,
pigs, right?
That's right.
Texas or Florida where you can do that. A little different here.
Georgia. Best pig hunting I've ever done. I just did this year. Awesome.
Yeah. Down in the
Thermals
swamps.
and suppressors. Yeah.
Lay them over. They don't even know. All they hear is that bolt slip. That's it. That's all they hear. Well, Jason, glad to have you. We'll talk more about your hunt. You tagged out first and shot a really nice deer, and excited to hear more about that. So congrats. And to your immediate left, your good buddy, Mr.
Kevin Steele. Yeah, I'm the publisher of Petersen's Hunting, and I get to hang out with all these fun people and actually make a living at it. And I've been doing it for a long time, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Local? Central Coast?
Yeah. About 18 years ago, we moved up from Southern California, where I'd been working for 25 years out of L.A., and the opportunity presented itself where I could finally work from home, and I leapt at it. I spent 16 years commuting 4 hours a day from Orange County to Sunset and then Wilshire Boulevard to our buildings.
4 hours a day to go 20 miles.
Yeah, exactly. When we were Petersen Publishing Company and then the Petersen Companies. I had hunted up here probably since the late 80s. Knew the area pretty well. Knew that if the opportunity to work from home ever presented itself, then my wife and I were definitely interested in moving up to this area, which is, as you guys know, it's kind of a paradise. It's not what people think of when they think of California. It's a great place for sportsmen, not only hunters but fishermen as well. You got freshwater, two of the biggest lakes in California, some great little trout streams up in the Santa Lucias, and 16 miles from here you got the Pacific Ocean. So what's not to like? Plus, we don't get snow.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to hate the weather here. Aside from a day like today, which is a little brutal. Thank God the guys got tagged out yesterday. But Kevin, nice having you, and we'll have to blame Kevin if there's anything said because he's responsible for both of you guys. So
exactly.
What can I say? I apologize. I apologize in advance.
There was some interesting conversations that happened today that might get relived on the podcast. So
I hope not.
Okay.
So then I'm Ryan Newkirk. I guess I'm kind of the guide, outfitter, cook, host.
More like a bottle washer, maybe head bottle washer.
A little bit of that too.
Wine barista,
bottle emptier, that's for sure.
Enabler.
Yeah, so
enabler.
Squeeze.
Steinbeck Vineyard.
2 a.m.
chief
conversationalist
enabling
and all of the above, right? So I was really excited when I ran into you in downtown Paso, I think
Yeah.
it was, Kevin, and we just chatted and said, hey, let's make this happen. You know, you hunted back here in 2016, I think we decided. And since then, every year at some point we've connected and you said, hey, when are we going to get Jason a blacktail? Jason needs to shoot a blacktail. When are we going to get Jason a blacktail? Worked out good this year. And so, you know, my normal daytime job is I manage the farming operations here at Steinbeck Vineyards. But then this is a really awesome little detour, getting to host some good people and hunt some good bucks. So we had about as ideal of an opening weekend or opening day, realistically, as we could have had. You know, we knocked down 2 just awesome A-zone bucks. It's August 14th.
Yep.
Opener. The forecast initially was for 108 degrees. We lucked out yesterday. I think we hit a high of 92, which is still pretty toasty.
But it was comfortable the majority of the day. It was nice.
Yeah, but, you know, deer were just moving everywhere, and put some good stalks, several good stalks. You guys got a really good taste of what it's like to hunt in the vineyard. We got it done before we hit that 106, 107 degree temperature today. So,
Are we all going to have to talk about Kevin's little deer he shot 5 years ago, or are we just going to leave that?
I mean, it's come up, half a dozen times at least already throughout the course of this hunt.
I think Kevin's put it on his phone as his background picture or something. So
Has he ever reminded either of you, this is the deer I shot? Because I'm going to put it out there, he shot
He's
a
reminded us
beautiful
a
deer.
lot that he's not a trophy hunter. He's a meat
Beautiful
hunter.
deer. Beautiful deer.
And he's also the non-trophy
You can
hunter
see the
that has a
smile on his face right
134-inch blacktail on his wall. So,
I'm just not used to getting trophies, so I've never really paid much attention to them. I have always hunted for the experience. You know, I love to eat wild game. I love the pursuit. I love being out in the outdoors. And, you know, how big they are really doesn't matter that much to me, as Jason can attest, because over our many hunts together over the last, I would say, almost 15 years, he insists that I always shoot the small one.
well, I think it's only fair.
you're up first.
Yeah, that's about what it gets down to. So, you know, maybe I am a trophy hunter, but I just, you know, never have the opportunity to do it.
Well, you know,
I
everyone's...
think never is a big word. I think that there are many times when you choose a special trophy instead of the largest one.
Well-
you go after some stuff that I'm like, why did you do that? But
It's just good manners, you know.
No,
I'm
it's
saving the better specimen for you.
no, it's
Who looks
it's not
better behind
that.
the camera?
Yeah, well, behind the camera, we both look the same. In front of the camera, I look better.
That's the beauty of a podcast. They
Yes,
can't see
but
our face.
I have to agree with Jason on that. He does look very good when he's shot quartering forward.
Okay, yeah, well, you have to get the angle right.
It's all about the angles.
It's all about the angles.
So you guys came in, did you, well, I guess thinking about just expectations, right? I mean, neither of you had shot a blacktail. One, Joe being from California, you know, your sub-adult life and moving later in life, but never hunting here. I mean, maybe you guys can just talk through, okay, I'm coming to a vineyard to hunt blacktails in Central California. Like, what's going through your mind? What expectations are you having?
Well, honestly, for me, I was expecting to shoot a 135-inch blacktail because I knew I just had to beat Kevin. And everything I've seen in the meetings for the past several months is his blacktail in the background of our Zoom chats. So I'm looking at that going, oh, yeah, this is going to be a great hunt.
Boss is pumping you there. He's
yeah,
like,
and
hey, look at this one.
This is amazing. This is the biggest deer that was ever shot there. And,
That's
there's a lot of
actually-
big ones coming around.
That's actually true. I didn't know you were going to go there.
But no, it's great. No, I was absolutely pumped to come. I mean, seeing that deer, I didn't have the expectation that I was going to shoot a deer of that caliber. All joking aside, I knew it was going to be a good hunt. I was really interested to see the experience of hunting in a vineyard, because it was just going to be something completely different from anything I've ever been exposed to.
Yeah. Which jumping out in the Bridgers and Bozeman hunting mule deer, it's a whole different story than coming here in a vineyard where you got 8 to 10 feet. You're
exactly.
Like, there's a deer, now he's gone.
Yeah.
And you go to the next row, now he's gone again.
Yeah. Like we see deer up in Montana, you know, at a mile, 2 miles away, and spend the day trying to get on them. Where here we're looking down every single row, straining our eyes in the shadows, trying to find these bucks that are, you know, either sticking their head in the grapes or bedded in the shadows. And it's a difficult hunt, not physically, but it's difficult because it's like a game of cat and mouse. It's a search. Like, you really have to work for it. So,
yeah. But I mean, so maybe you didn't shoot a buck the size of Kevin's, but you shot a pretty nice deer.
Oh, definitely. I couldn't be more thrilled with the buck that I ended up with.
Deer.
Yeah, most definitely.
Well, you know. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, you know, when he was saying it's a cat and mouse game, Ryan rattled off some interesting figures the other day when we were headed out to the range, I think, even before we started hunting. And he said, you know, right now, basically, we're hunting a portion of the vineyard that's about 500 acres. He said we've got over 400 rows and over 400,000.
4,000 rows.
4,000 rows. 400,000 vines. Yep. And that just blew my mind. So if that would give the audience, you know, an impression of what you're dealing with here, especially when, you know, the rows are roughly, you know, 10 feet across maybe, and they can go up to 400 yards long, and you can't see across them. So you literally have to be at one end or the other and look straight down the row.
Yeah.
There's very, very few spots where you get enough elevation change or angle to see across multiple rows. I think we had that happen maybe 3 or 4 times where I was able to see a deer in the upcoming rows rather than looking straight down the row, which is a complete game changer where, you know, I'm used to getting up high, glassing, finding something, putting in the effort to go get it.
Yeah. So basically putting all your eggs in one cart that day and going in after one deer that you saw 3 miles away, or here that deer could be 60 yards in front of you, crosses over, and you never see it again.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything changes so fast. And we were talking about this whole weekend how they move through these vines so easily. You have your drip lines and the wires, and they'll go through it like there's nothing there. But as soon as, like, one of us, like, we go to try and step under that, and it's, you know, a slow process.
Well, and it's really incredible because, you know, the space between the wire in most of these fields is about 20 inches. And then you take a deer that has 16 or 17 inch tall antlers plus its head, and you watch them go through it, and they'll just run through it at full speed.
Yeah, effortless.
Yeah.
You know, you can't even keep up with them if you're in a pickup.
Yeah.
Let alone trying to chase them around on foot.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jason, you were saying you love hunting mule deer. That's your thing. And then here you come to a place like this, and, you know, it's a little bit different, huh?
It is different. It's you know, the reason I love hunting mule deer is because typically you get to look at quite a few deer. It's a great spot and stalk hunt, and, you know, in that respect, this didn't disappoint at all. We saw a lot of deer. I mean, a pile of deer, and gosh, half a dozen, 8 maybe, you know, shooter bucks. I'd say right there at least. So I'm in, you know, tons of, you know, smaller bucks, but you know, the ones that were like made you consider flicking the safety off, half a dozen or 8 of them, and that's cool. Especially considering we only hunted one day. I mean, you know.
Yeah. One day, and probably how many acres and where they were in within size?
Well, I mean, we covered it all.
Yeah.
But, you know, a lot of the time every time you hit the brakes on the pickup, it's doe, doe. Oh, there's twins, doe, fawn,
Spike.
you know, the
Little fork.
Yep. The population is huge this year. But like Jason said, you know, there's a lot of good bucks running around.
But I tell you what, more closely, you know, if you want to compare this hunt to another one, I'd say it more closely resembles hunting grizzlies in the Arctic. Because, when you're hunting grizzlies in the Arctic, you take a few steps, reach down, grab a blueberry. Here you do the same thing, you reach over and grab a grape. I don't know if I was eating the profits or not.
I was wondering where you were going with that. I didn't quite get the analogy of the association.
Staying hydrated, right?
Those blueberries in Alaska are pretty good. But
Well,
Yeah,
and I tell you,
really
no,
are.
these grapes, at least if you look for the shiny purple ones, and maybe that's the ones that are deer licked. I'm not sure, but
Deer saliva adds flavor, actually.
they are pretty darn sweet.
and then we have the salsa spoon.
Now the deer were not necessarily. Yeah, the salsa spoon's bad. I didn't talk about that. But the deer were not eating the purple ones. The deer were eating the unripe ones. The green ones, which because of my spectacular shooting display, we got to find out. But yeah, I ended up my first shot a little far back, got it in the liver, and then followed it up with a couple more that did hit. But one of them was the south end of the northbound train, and
Opened him up a little bit.
Opened up a little bit. Yeah. The other one took out the heart. So
If it hasn't happened to you, you haven't hunted long enough.
that's my philosophy is if it's still standing, keep shooting.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what. Sorry. That's what we saw real quick. Is back to the whole layout of this hunt. When you've got a 10-foot window, and you got a deer that anybody who's hunted deer for any amount of time knows that 90% of the time they spot you before you spot them, or they know you're there. So you've got about 3 seconds to make the shot. Mm-hmm. And so, you get set up, and as happens frequently, when you took that first shot, that deer was just starting to take a step. Mm-hmm. And I was really thrilled with how that played out, because you just slammed another round in and put another one in him, because tracking deer in a vineyard is a nightmare. Tracking, absolute nightmare.
Tracking deer anywhere is a nightmare, unless you're on frozen pond. It's not going to be a good day if you have to track a deer.
Yeah, and so it took more than 2 shots, but at the same time, that deer was down within 100 yards.
Yeah,
And you joked about your shooting, but that's probably what you did the best. It's like you had a scenario where the deer stepped as your shot broke, but you cycled that bolt so fast and got back on that deer, and if that hadn't have happened, we would have been in a situation where we're on our hands and knees crawling through the vineyard looking at
through that nice
ground.
yellow star thistle.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And I thought it was great, because a lot of inexperienced hunters or new hunters would not cycle the bolt that fast. I mean, we were talking about that a different time, Ryan, when outfitters and guys are always reminding their clients to rack another round. Nobody does it just out of just off the cuff,
American hunters are conditioned, I think, improperly, that to be a proper hunter, you have to kill your game with one shot. And to a certain extent, that's true. The problem is it doesn't translate across all situations. And guys get hung up on that, and they get to the point where they'll shoot, and then they'll lift their head up, and if the animal doesn't fall immediately, they don't know what to do, literally. It takes them too long to cycle the gun. Most people are not trained or competent cycling a bolt action from the shoulder. They immediately lower the gun, cycle the action, and put it back up on your shoulder, and that's the complete wrong way to do it. So, it's a question of training, it's a question of conditioning, it's a question of a whole bunch of variables that you have no control over. But, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and unfortunately too many people just don't know the right way to do it.
Well, I think you're exactly right. It's not something that just comes natural to somebody. Just because they buy a hunting license and a rifle, people don't know that, hey, if it's still standing, follow it up, right?
Yep.
And it is training. And it's, the other half of that is maybe it's not always training. Maybe it's learning the lessons the hard way. Maybe it's losing animals, which, as a hunter, it's the worst thing that can happen to you. But, there's a lesson to be learned there still.
Yeah, I think, outfitters are savvy. They've seen so many, and guides, they've seen so many hunters of various experience levels come through their camps. And they know, if a guy gets out of the truck and he's got a new rifle and it's got a brand new sling on it and a brand new backpack and a pair of shiny boots, that he's going to have to watch that guy. They just know it instinctually. Whereas if the guy gets out and the boots are all scuffed up and he's wearing a backpack, and he's wearing a backpack not only to carry his gear, but he knows that it makes an expedient rest if he has to go prone to make a proper shot. Or he's carrying his own shooting sticks or his own tripod on the rifle. These are little indicators that this guy is experienced enough to know that he's not just going to be, rapid fire Joe, shooting offhand at 200 yards at a deer that's running away. And these are the situations we run into in our public hunting grounds because, folks take a hunter safety class, but those classes don't teach you everything.
No, and there's the etiquette, and there's so much more from experiential, just being out in the field. And to that point, I took Ryan out in March this year, and he shot his first animal with his new rifle. It was a pig, but it was interesting because I spotted the pig and got Ryan on it. He had his sticks, and of course I know Ryan's a cold-blooded killer, but this boar was feeding away, quartering away. It was a perfect shot, and Ryan shoots, and he immediately puts another one in, and that pig ran off and was burying his nose in the dirt, and I knew he was done, but Ryan just sat under him, ready to go again. It was cool because I videoed him doing it, but it was impressive. To your point, being conditioned to know, one's good, two is a hell of a lot better, and especially for buffalo hunting, 3 to 4 to 5, as Craig would say, if the first one didn't make an impression, the next 9 won't. But nonetheless, the more you get in them, the better, for sure, at the end of it.
The dictum on dangerous game is you keep shooting until the game stops moving. I mean, it's just as simple as that.
Yeah.
Well, and so then to Joe's deer, we had a perfect broadside shot, 157 yards, I think it was.
Yeah, somewhere right in there.
We're standing shooting off a tripod, and you made a good shot, but there was also 20-some miles an hour of wind, probably, 15 to 20 miles an hour of wind, and so you're starting to stretch things at that point. And that deer, on impact, I saw the hit, it looked good, and on impact, that deer just bolted across like 6 rows. And so we picked up the sticks, moved over as fast as we could. By the time we saw where it was laying down and, breathing its last, we set up on it. You didn't end up having to fire another shot, but you were ready to.
Yeah, exactly. There wasn't a second there where until we were completely sure that I wasn't going to have a rifle trained on it.
And with how you felt about that shot, if you had another opportunity to put one in it, you would have.
Oh, 100%.
Yep.
Like that was honestly one of the harder shots I've taken. Everybody will say, 157 yards. That's a chip shot, whatnot. I'm not experienced shooting off of sticks. I find a prone position everywhere I am, set up my pack, that's just the way it goes usually, or I'm seated, anything like that. Standing shooting off of sticks is not something I'm practiced at. I've done it a couple of times, and, in that wind's just moving your body and causing a lot of motion in that scope.
Yep.
And I think one thing that kind of helped settle my brain while I was going through my shot process was just I'm an avid archer, and you always have that pin float when you're moving around, and I was able to kind of steady myself and move with the motion of the rifle, which helped me make the shot. But like you said, I was not fully comfortable, and if that buck was still standing right there, I was ready to put another one in him right then and there. So.
Yep.
Well, it didn't come to me naturally. There is, you take your hunter safety class, but there are a lot of excellent places to go to get, more advanced hunter training. Doug down at FTW, he drilled it into me. You pull the trigger, and the next thing you do is put another round in the chamber, right?
Well, and the worst thing you can do when you're squeezing off a round is to jerk the trigger, right? You got to follow through, but there's a big difference between following through on your shot and admiring your shot.
Exactly. Lifting your head off the stock, trying to see where it fell. And trigger control is so darn important. Having your trigger set to the proper weight for the game you're pursuing. You set it as light as is safe to use when hunting, and I like mine to be about 1.5 pounds. On a dangerous game gun, because you get pumped. Oftentimes, if you're, on a big bear or an elephant or a buffalo, you're blown. You've been chasing that herd. It's dangerous. Your blood pressure is up. Your heart level is up. You're breathing hard. They slam the sticks down. You don't want 1.5 pound trigger. You want like a 3-pound trigger, because you're going to squash it. When the time comes to make that shot, you're going to squash it. So you want a heavier trigger pull. Mm-hmm. I had an old boy from Texas when I was a young guy tell me that, you never pull a trigger. You squeeze it gently like your girlfriend's nipple. And that always stuck with me. And he was absolutely right.
I love it. I was going to go somewhere else with that, and it totally just...
Yeah, trying to visualize this right now.
That's better than the clip, the conditional.
Oh, boy.
My wife came with us on this hunt, so I'm not going to talk about any girlfriend's nipples. That's just all it is.
But Joe, you talk about shooting off sticks, and I learned a different appreciation for sticks. Ryan and I went to a shooting course, and we were shooting out to 1,200 yards off sticks, using back braces, and so it's almost as good as prone, how we were shooting, although a lot of us prefer prone, if we've got a pack set out or a bipod or whatever. But it was incredible to stand there using sticks, standard sticks with a back brace, and shooting with a 20-mile-an-hour variable wind, shooting out to 1,100 yards, hitting a 14-inch plate. So it's doable, but it's different if you're not used to it. It's different shooting off sticks.
Oh, very much so. What type of back brace? I'm not familiar.
It's a 2x4.
2x4.
Literally.
Oh.
Yeah,
so we would take that 2x4 and just kind of prop it up alongside our arms, so then you kind of hang on to the 2x4. So, like when you're shooting off a bench, right? A lot of guys will stick their forend hand, their offhand underneath
their
the buttstock of the gun, and then kind of use that as your second point of contact. Mm-hmm. Well, when you're if you're standing up, you don't have that second point of contact. You hang on to that 2x4, all of a sudden you have it.
It's a triangle.
Yeah,
it's a triangle. You've got 3 points of contact on the rifle. You got your forend, you got your hand on the trigger, and you got your elbow. And it's a triangle.
And more and more all the time,
be supported.
You're seeing companies come out, companies that have made standard tripods now. They're coming out with some sort of rear support that attaches to that tripod, because it makes a world of difference. If you're trying to make a precise shot, it's better than using your guide shoulder as your second point of contact.
They will also do that. Using the guide shoulder is one technique. The other is to use 2 sets of standing sticks.
Correct.
And one set is bracing the rifle at the forend. The other is bracing your firing hand elbow. You rest your elbow on the top of the sticks. Something that I found in Europe, which I had never thought of, and I went, this is so simple, it's like a paper clip. Why didn't we think of this before? You're in a box blind, okay, like you might find in Texas or over a food plot in, a whitetail state. And you've got, you're sitting in your little chair, and you got windows on 4 sides. And, you shoot however you shoot from there. Well, in Europe, they have the same kind of box blind, although they're usually made out of local materials rather than molded plastic. But they take a 2x4, and they position it from the front window to the corner window. So if you're right-handed, it would go from the front window to the window that's off your right shoulder. And all you do is you rest your arm on that 2x4 when you shoot. And bingo, you are so solid, it's like shooting from a bench rest.
Are you sure it's a 2x4?
2x4.
Wouldn't it be the metric system there?
Oh, well, yes, and in that regard, I have no idea how big it would be.
50 by 100 millimeter stick of timber.
But talk about simple, a 4 or 5 foot 2x4.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. I think those tripods were $1,500, 8 whatever those tripods they were shooting, and which there was all military grade stuff we were using, but wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, but like those African sporting creation sticks that I carry, the reason I carry, they're not the most stable tripod on the market, but they're good and they're fast.
They're easy to deploy.
And they're strong, and the thing that you can do too is if you have a decent piece of, you find a tree limb or something like that you can lean your forend on, you deploy those sticks as a rear support, or you stick your chicken wing on there or whatever, and I mean it's amazing how stable you can get with just a simple device.
Absolutely true, and these are all of the little shooting tips and aids that you can pick up, either from reading the writings in a good magazine like Petersen's Hunting, or listening to a good podcast like Lucas has here. You learn from the guys who have done it and aren't these new influencers, as they call them. It's people with experience in the field that have hunted in different places under different conditions, and can actually teach you something.
But I think absolutely that's where it comes from. The really where you get the skill is getting out and doing it. And it may be that you steal your wife's broomstick, and there are 3 of them. Get some electrical tape, tape them together, and get out there and shoot off of it.
Are you giving away secrets, Jason?
I'm not saying that my wife rides a broomstick at all. That's not. That is absolutely not what I'm saying.
You can do a lot with a bicycle inner tube.
Yeah.
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 So, Jason, you were first out of the gate. So when you saw your deer or deers that you saw, was there a moment in your mind that you saw high and tight, lots of points, wide and kind of boxy? I mean, what kind of were you looking for?
We saw it all. Just those big frame deer.
You're a mule deer guy.
Just that's what it does it for me. Yeah. I like wide. I do. If it looks like a 747 coming into the land, and I'm going to shoot it.
That's a really wide buck.
Yeah.
I mean, he was well outside his ears.
There was one that I think was wider that we saw, and we didn't even put a stalk on it because we thought he was just a huge fork, right? Big 2x. And later I think we saw that he did have like a tiny little fish hook coming off the back of his G2, so each one. So I mean I suppose it was at least an inch long, could hang a ring on it, whatever their points, but for all practical purposes, it was just a huge 2x.
Well, so we've seen him a couple times since then, and I don't think he's wider than your buck. I think your buck is wider. I think the way he looks, he has a big frame.
Well, he doesn't come out. He doesn't come up from his head. He comes straight out the side.
Straight out and then does a 90.
Well, he looks like a longhorn. He looks like a Texas longhorn.
Yeah.
That's what he looks like.
So he just goes out and up then, just a big fork.
Way out and then up. I mean, it's just like...
Yours has just looking at the I'd say that the lines of your deer, when I saw a photo of it real quick, Ryan showed me, but then when I actually saw it, it holds itself well. And I mean, a whole measly 23, 24 inch wide deer. I mean, for a blacktail with a nice little kind of bladed point on the backside, just a beautiful deer.
Well, yeah, yeah.
When 20 inches is the magic number in this area, there's not a lot of people that kill deer over 20 inches. Nope. And you killed one that's 3.5, 4 inches over 20 inches.
Yeah. No.
It's a great buck.
I could not be more thrilled. I mean, it's what I like. Big, pretty deer, and that's what it was.
Well, and the fat on that thing, too. We peeled out a backstrap and had backstrap for dinner tonight. And there was
2 inches.
Pounds of fat coming off before we even got to the meat.
What do you say, Kevin?
Venison,
2
right?
inches? 2 inches thick?
They were 2 inches thick along the backbone. I mean, I kept peeling and couldn't find the meat. And I peeled some more, and then more, and then finally I dug in deep. I just figured, let's go for broke. I dug in deep, and when it came off, it was at least it was like that thick, at least 2 inches thick. And I said to Ryan, when we peeled when we peeled Joe's, I was looking at the carcass last night, and I said if I had just pulled up in the truck and looked at that, I would have thought it was a hog hanging there, not a deer. There was so much fat on it. And a drought year.
Well, and that's what's kind of fun about this, right, is, these deer, for the most part, for most of the year, live kind of a feedlot lifestyle. They just hang out in the vineyard. They've got food, water, shelter right there. We have a couple ponds, and I have a few irrigation troughs set out and all that, and they don't even get hit a lot of the time because we're irrigating the vineyard. They're eating the leaves. They're eating the grapes. They don't even leave. And so, from a food standpoint, it's just absolutely spectacular venison. But then what's cool is from a hunting standpoint, how many different stocks did we put on? At least 3 or 4 different times we tried to sneak on a couple different deer. Mm-hmm. And before, Jason, you connected on your deer, and as soon as you get out of the truck, and I don't know if they recognize rifles or not, but they know something's up, and so it's a real hunt.
Yeah. When we got out last night, when we were looking for Joe's buck, and we were up on that big hill there where you've got that steel building, and we were looking down into that big bowl. As soon as we rounded that corner, the wind was at our back, and there was a doe down there that I had my binoculars on, and I felt that wind blowing against my back, and all of a sudden, none of us were making any noise. We were a good 200 yards away, at least 250, and she just put her head up and looked right at us. And she was catching our wind, is my presumption.
Yeah.
It's a real hunt. It's a real hunt.
Yeah, and I think people probably think because it is a vineyard and they've got all their food, shelter, cover.
Well, if you've got, what are we going to say, 20 legal bucks, and at least 7 or 8, maybe 9 shooter bucks on 500 acres, how can that be that hard? Right?
They haven't been here.
But then you think about it in terms of if you've got 400,000 bush, you're always looking under a bush for a deer, right? Especially when it's this hot. You got 400,000 bushes that could be laying under.
Right, in 4,000 rows.
And then every 10 feet, it's like you're coming up over the crest of a hill and you're looking into some new territory.
Yeah.
And they know where they can go where they will not see a truck.
Right.
Those deer, there are places on this vineyard, and it's not like there's one place. There's lots and lots of places on this vineyard where those deer can go, and they won't be able to be seen from a road, and they know that.
Yeah.
So, and they obviously go there too.
Well, and hunting in 500 acres too, and again, we talked about there's houses all around. It's tight quarters, and so the first time we saw the buck that you ended up connecting on, or maybe the second time, we chased that one around.
Yeah.
Pretty good before we got on it. Yeah. It's bedded 50 yards away, facing away, so no clean shot, but it was also a little bit of a skyline shot, so it wasn't a safe shot. So we're not going to take it. So we tried to sneak in on it, and again, we got to, 45 or 50 yards. This thing stands up and looks at us for 2 or 3 seconds, but it was a skyline shot. Sure. You can't take it.
Yeah. It's...
Yeah.
And what's crazy is normally you'd think, okay, so you're doing a stalk, deer busts, you think it's only going to move off 50 yards, you would continue the stalk, right? No, it
you
doesn't
can't
make
do
sense.
that here.
You can't do it because the deer didn't go straight down a row, it took off a crossroads. And it's not a viable option. There's no way.
As soon as they step out of that row that you see them in,
They disappear.
You're gone. It's over. You
Well,
have
and
you have
then-
to get back out and keep
Well,
looking.
imagine like having a wall full of doors in front of you. Say there are 50 doors along a wall in front of you, and you go through each one of those doors is a separate hallway, right? Well, you can go into any one of those hallways that you want to, but if you want to change hallways, you have to come back through the door and go through the next one. The deer can go through the walls, though. It's not fair, really. I mean,
I'd say you ended up all right,
I'd say
Jason.
the game's rigged.
You did pretty good.
CZ rifles ended up being a pretty good equalizer.
There are some advantages that we use as hunters, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and then, so Joe, on your hunt, that was kind of a fun, unique challenge that we ran into because there were 5 legal bucks that were all kind of bunched up,
standing on top of each other.
And there were 2 really good ones, and took us a minute to figure out which one we were going to target.
Yeah, it did.
And I think, it all happened pretty quick, but it ended up being this kind of like whichever one presents a great shot first is what we're going to take. So go ahead.
Exactly. Well, one of them was the wide buck that we were just talking about that probably isn't wider than yours, Jason, but has
looks like the 747, yeah.
Exactly. Has that look, that super wide look, but is, for all intents and purposes, just a big fork. And the other target buck that we had with him, you and I talked about it, Ryan. Beautiful deer. You had scouting pictures of it. Really heavy mass around the bases, and really tall 4x4. Has that classic Columbia Blacktail look to him. Kind of crowns out, like comes back in towards himself, and just a really, really awesome buck. And from the second you showed me the picture of him from scouting, I was like, that's the buck I really want to shoot. Just, it's that quintessential blacktail look to me, and something that I wanted to target. But having that other one there, it was a tough decision. It was difficult at that point, but having to bounce back and forth between the 2 deer and waiting for the proper shot opportunity. And when you have 3 deer in that row or 4 deer in that row, there's not a lot of room to find a shot opportunity. You're not going to take an ethical shot really until that deer's alone. So we got pretty lucky, got ahead of them a few rows, and that tall buck stepped in by himself, and I was able to steady myself and make that shot.
What's so crazy is, most of us who've been hunting for any length of time have had that situation where you're having to sort them out, right? You have does moving in front of you, whatever it is, or behind. You got to not only be cognizant of the animal that's in front of your target, but also the ones that's behind, because especially here in California, we're using the copper bullets. And they're awesome. They open up fast, and they penetrate, and they do devastating damage. But it's only the front part of that bullet that opens up. The bottom of that part, the back half of that bullet stays solid, and it keeps going. It's going to hit.
It doesn't stop.
It is going to hit whatever is behind
it.
It
keeps going.
It's going to be the exception when you recover one of those bullets out of a whitetail or blacktail sized animal.
For sure.
But anyway, he didn't have to deal with does mixing in and out, sorting them out. He had to deal with shooter bucks getting in front of and behind each other. I mean, that was cool. That was really cool.
It was a terrible problem.
And we knew it.
It was such a terrible experience.
And it's probably never going to happen again.
No, I can't imagine it would. I really can't.
We were with Joe when he spotted those, but we didn't go on the stalk to give him the best opportunity. But we knew exactly what was going on, because it took a while, to hear that shot, and we knew exactly what was happening. We knew that those bucks, those shooter bucks, were mixing, and he was just having to get one sorted out.
Yeah.
It's too cool.
There was one point I was looking at both of them. I was like, I could probably kill both of them with this Eco Strike. It'd go right through one.
It would have.
It really would have. Like that. That damage from that bullet was impressive. I was pretty astounded by the hole it put in that critter. Yeah. But I think that whole situation kind of really goes to show the effort that you put in here at this vineyard. It's like you've run such a great operation managing your deer, managing your herd, when, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say, well over 90% of vineyards just don't want them in there at all.
Yeah, you drive around this area, and almost everything is high fenced, and it's just like most agriculture in California now. It's transitioning more and more to high value crops, where you're talking, gross from your gross revenue is going to be from $5,000 to, in some cases, $50,000 plus per acre, and wildlife's just not tolerated.
Yeah, which is a bummer. And what you guys are doing here, you have a very high value crop. Like your wine's amazing. The grapes you grow are, top notch. They're the highest level, and I think you're bridging that gap where you could have a healthy relationship between agriculture and wildlife. which I think is an awesome platform to work off of, and it's a really impressive one, to say the least. Like, you've done a great job, and I was absolutely astounded by the beauty of the area and the quality of bucks that we were seeing. So,
Well, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, it's something that we're committed to. You know, we love what we do, growing premium wine grapes in the Paso area. We love hunting, and we also value wildlife and value real conservation.
Well, it just goes to show sustainability and conservation can happen, and the two can live together in synergy and
Can
be
coexist.
absolutely okay. And it's cool that you guys have come in from outside to see how that happens, because it's not normally you would come in and you would do a blacktail hunt on a vineyard. That's just not the norm, but it is sustainable and it is a viable thing. And Ryan's done stuff here that not a lot of people in this area really do. And he's just, one, having that mindset and knowing how to do it, but also understanding the crop and the grape that he has and how they, again, let those two live together. It's pretty cool to see how those two thrive. So,
Yeah. One of the coolest experiences I've had, for sure.
Yeah, it may not be the norm, but considering some of the traditions, like popping the cork on a cab if you kill in the cab vines, and some other nice tasting opportunities go, I think that when it comes to Central Coast blacktails, I think the Steinbeck Vineyard is going to be my norm in the future.
yeah, definitely hard to beat some good Wagyu venison with it paired with a nice little crash.
Wagyu venison.
A little
Wagyu
crash,
venison. We had some
Steinbeck
tonight for
Vineyard.
supper.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, it's been great having you guys on. Great to meet you guys. I'm glad you guys had a great time. I call this our little slice of heaven here on the Central Coast. It is a pretty remarkable place for California, and like Kevin was saying, just for the outdoorsman, it's almost the ultimate place to live. And it's cool that you guys got to come and experience that this weekend, and some great memories. We didn't get into some of the funny stories, but you guys can share those when the video comes out in the future. But again, great meeting you guys, great having you guys. And on behalf, I know Ryan, and who's not an old hat on the podcast here, did another great job on opening weekend, and guys are walking away happy. If I could show the smiles on your faces, I would, but looks like you guys had a great time. So
It was great.
and Kevin for hosting.
Thanks,
The
Lucas.
hostess with the mostest. So anyway, thanks guys. Thanks for jumping on, and let's do this again another time, huh?
Definitely.
Appreciate
You bet.
having
Maybe
us.
over
pleasure.
campfire.
Yep.
Sounds good.
All right.
Montana next time.
Hey listeners, this is Lucas Paw, host of the RNA Outdoors podcast. Check out our website at rnaoutdoors.com to find all of our podcast platforms. Go listen today where you podcast. Additionally, leave a review and a 5-star rating. These reviews help boost our popularity and outreach. You can also follow us on our social media outlets, Instagram at Rod and Arrow Outdoors, Facebook RNA Outdoors, and YouTube RNA Outdoors. All links are in the show notes as well. We hope you'll pass along our channel to your friends and colleagues. Subscribe today and follow along on the journey.